Hello and welcome to today's Culture Extravaganza. He's been called a genius, a legend, and one of the most inventive music producers in the world. His signature track, The Bells, is probably the most played techno track in history. In a moment, we'll speak to Jeff Mills, but first, here's a reminder of the anthem of our sonic generation. Delighted to say that the Detroit techno legend Jeff Mills joins us now. Thank you for being here on France 24.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Now, just wanted to start by asking you, for many, being a DJ means putting on other people's music, mixing it together. But what you do is so much more creative and so much a world away from that preconception, isn't it? Tell us a little bit more.
Well, I believe that programming music for people to physically move to is only one reason why the DJ is there, but to use the music in a way to kind of tell stories, to translate certain pieces of information, basically to change the people from a different state than when they came in, a mental state.
And you've dedicated your life really to travelling and preaching your vision of techno music as an art, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I think it somewhat comes from perhaps maybe the city where I come from, Detroit. We learn to work with music in a much more profound way. It's connected to life much closer than, say, some other parts of the world. We really depend on it of it being an extension of our voice. And so we tend to, kind of go deeper into the significance and the symbolic effects of music.
Let's go back a few years to the late 80s when you were part of the Detroit techno collective Underground Resistance. Now, this I quote, produced uncompromising music geared toward promoting awareness and facilitating political change. Explain a little bit about that and whether you succeeded in doing that.
Well, we felt at the time that the industry, for the most part, was quite restrictive. That if you were a small independent label or independent artist, not signed to a larger company, that you were somehow kind of held back from a lot of the parts of the industry. And we wanted to make a statement by changing the structure in which a small independent label or an artist would actually work and how he would communicate with his audience. So we literally kind of reconstructed the process, and as a result, we kind of inspired other people to kind of follow this way and kind of create this kind of universal type of way of communicating this way of translating information from Detroit to London, Detroit to Paris, to Japan, and things like that. And so, we think we succeeded in expressing this idea of a certain amount of freedom through music.
And more recently, you've been working on other things like scoring for films, for old mute films, in fact. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I and a few other artists about a decade ago felt that it's really a shame that electronic music isn't really heard. The type of techno that we are most familiar with really isn't heard in other art forms, and cinema was the one where they typically use classical arrangements rock and hip hop in some very stereotypical type of ways, and so we thought that maybe one of us should do something. So I kind of volunteered myself to find a film, a very famous film, a very popular film that everyone knew, and to redesign the soundtrack and then put it out there so we can get some response from it. And Metropolis was the film.
You've been since making album after album. The latest is called The Occurrence, which is a very interesting project related to science fiction.
Right.
Explain it to us.
Well, it's a project that started about 4 years ago. I felt that we should be hearing more variation and hear and see many different perspectives in electronic music. Not just music made for clubs and dance floors, that perhaps maybe more attention to using music to be able to really tell a story, a fantastic story, an unbelievable story, that techno fits that type of form best. And so I thought maybe working towards getting or working in conjunction with science fiction would bring more attention to an additional way of how techno can be applied to it. So, and I've always been a fan of animation and manga and comic books and things since I was very young. So I had some knowledge and background in it, and so The Occurrence is trying to fuse these two forms together, and it tells a story. That the music was programmed in a way so that it tells a story of someone during a spacewalk experiences a strange happening occurrence in a radiation storm, and they come back to Earth, and when they come back to Earth, they're not quite the same. Things are different. They have an uncanny way of altering and modifying electricity.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I think people need to listen to that to understand a little bit more about it. Now, I'm just about to run out of time, but very quickly, good news for techno fans in France. You've just moved to Paris.
Yes.
Why have you decided to base yourself here, just quickly?
Well, I've been trying to move here for about 10 years, but I've never really had the opportunity. We never really set enough time aside. I lived in Berlin for about 15 years, but I've always worked mostly here, and have a lot of connections, a lot of friends here in Paris, and so we finally just said, okay, let's just do it. My wife and I, let's just find a place and just get in the city. And so we found a place a few weeks ago, and like I said, we're unpacking boxes now, even as I speak. So,
okay, well, good luck with all of that. And Jeff, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us here on France 24.
Thank you.
And just a reminder for you guys at home, the latest album by Jeff Mills is called The Occurrence. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see you tomorrow.